First anatomy lesson was called Intro Anatomy, where we learned about the structure of biological systems. And that includes matter, the material body, and it also included energy, malleable magnetic energy. Remember, we talked about magnetic fields and how magnetic fields can arrange themselves into structures that we are calling malleable magnetic energy. So the next two lessons were on the material body, where we delved deeply into the systems of the material body and the organs of the material body. And this week we're going to start the energy anatomy series of lessons. So there's quite a lot of lessons on energy anatomy. There's going to be one lesson on the lower mind anatomy, which is today. Then there's going to be two lessons on the energy body anatomy, because there's a lot to talk about in the energy body. And then there's going to be one lesson on the higher mind anatomy. So before I start with today, we are going to talk about energy anatomy now. So I want to make it absolutely clear, first of all, that we're now moving away from mainstream science, because the last two lessons was the material body, of course, and we used a mainstream app, Complete Anatomy, very good app for 3D modeling of the material body. But all that is part of accepted mainstream science, of course. Now we're moving into the realms outside of mainstream science when we talk about energy anatomy. And that is because it hasn't been discovered yet, in our opinion. Now, a lot of this stuff has been known about for thousands of years, intuitively. And it's been part of lots of different systems of healing and medicine for thousands of years. And most of the stuff that we're going to talk about in energy anatomy belongs in that category. It's been known about for thousands of years. We're going to go further, though. We're going to go even further and add another level of detail. And we're going to make it more biological, because we need to bring what is commonly referred to as spiritual stuff. We're going to bring it into science. That's what our aim is. So we're going to make it biological. That's why we've been working on a 3D model to act a little bit like the Complete Anatomy app. We've done that for the energy anatomy itself, because it is ultimately, at the end of the day, it is anatomy. Eventually, science will catch up with a lot of these concepts. And a lot of people are working on these concepts already out there. So things are starting to change. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. That's a good description of it, really. Yeah, there was a lot more spiritual back then. And religion kind of got imposed on people. So yes, you're right. Let's call it spirituality, really. And spirituality is all about knowing oneself and knowing the universe, isn't it? And really, it's the same thing. It's just same thing as science, but looking at it from a different angle, really, isn't it? Yeah, I agree. It's materialism has grown since the scientific revolution. I mean, science has its roots in philosophy, doesn't it? They used to call it natural philosophy, and then it turned into the scientific revolution. And then materialism sort of grew from there, and it's been going downhill ever since in terms of spirituality. So, I agree that this is just bringing it back together, but in a modern way, hopefully, because we're trying to combine scientific concepts with these ancient intuitions or knowledges. Yes, I agree with that. So. Another thing is about these diagrams that we're drawing. They come from three different aspects, I would say. One is ancient knowledge that has been known for thousands of years, that's readily available everywhere. And it's a build-up of knowledge, but it's still intuitive knowledge, isn't it? Knowledge of the chakra system, knowledge of the meridians and all the vessel pathways and all that sort of stuff. Knowledge of the Kundalini system, for example. So some of it is that. Some of it is our direct intuitive knowledge as well. So especially intuitive vision, to delve deeper and look and try and draw some of these aspects. And then thirdly, it's direct experience as well. So direct experience in manipulating these energies in ourselves and in others, of course, because a lot of this anatomy is essential for energy healing. So I'd say that these diagrams come from a mixture of those three things. So let me give you an introduction, first of all, to the program that I'm going to use. And then I'm just give you a quick overview of the different energy frameworks, and then we're going to go into the lower mind energy framework, because that's today's lesson, the lower mind. Okay, and I have managed to find a way of enlarging my pointer, so hopefully you guys can see that. Can you see my pointer easily there on the screen? Is that nice big? Okay, it works. Right then, so this is called Blender, and this is a free app. It's an open source app, so it's free, but it's very, very useful. So you can draw your own 3D models on it, basically. So here we have the male and the female. Now we are halfway through this, basically. So we've got to a certain point on the female, and we're still working on the male. We just haven't finished yet, basically. So I just wanted to show you that. So eventually we'll have both the male and the female. But for this lesson, we'll just concentrate on the female because we haven't finished the male. So let me turn the male off. And by the way, you guys can download this app if you want. And if you wanted to download it, then I can send you the model, because you can send this whole model by email, and you can actually upload it into your version of Blender if you want to have it on your computer as well. Right. So the next thing I want to show you is what our plans are for this model, basically. So I've got everything on there. You can see the energy body and chakra cords and stuff. But there's also the material body in there as well, if you can see inside there. Now, if I just take off the energy anatomy for a minute. So basically what we want to do with this diagram is actually link it into the material body. So if I go to the material body here, and let's say we take off the skin, it's actually got all the anatomy inside it as well. And you can download these anatomy diagrams, these 3D model anatomy diagrams, quite easily from the internet. So we've got all the anatomy in the material body in there as well. Take off the musculature, you can look even further inside. And what our aim is eventually is to link the energy anatomy completely into the material body to show that it is a human system. It is a one functioning unit, basically, and we separate all these things out just to make it easier to understand. But really, it's the human system, and there's no spiritual aspect and there's no material aspect, if you know what I mean. It's just the human system and lots of different types of energy. So for the moment, we haven't gone into each organ. For example, a meridian delivers energy to a particular area of the body. Now, we haven't gone that far yet to draw in the meridians and where they actually go, but that will be our next job. But we have drawn the energy body on top of the material body to show the locations of different things. Now, it's been known about for a long time now, as an example, it's been known about a long time that the crown chakra is at the location of the pineal gland. Now, so we've drawn this. So we've drawn the energy body and the lower mind organs in place on top of the material body so that it all fits in neatly and it all fits along the spine. You know, the chakras, it's been known about for ages that the chakras actually lie along the spinal column. So we've actually put them in place as well. So having said that, let me take off the material body now because we're going to be focusing on energy anatomy. So let me put everything back on for a minute. So this is everything with all the systems on. Now, as you can see, if you look inside there, it's looking a bit complicated, isn't it? And that's just with all the systems on. And the reason is because it is complicated. The material body is complicated. And there's no difference when we go into energy anatomy. When you look hard enough. And by the way, all you guys can use your intuitive vision to confirm this stuff for yourself, by the way. All you need to do is practice seeing inside the energy body. You don't need to look at anybody. You can do it all in here, in your brow chakra, using your brow chakra, your third eye vision, intuitive vision, whatever you want to call it. You can zoom in and look at things yourself if you practice. So you can confirm all this for yourself. Now, when you look closely, you've got all sorts of organs and systems in the energy body and all the magnetic energy frameworks. And it's just as complicated and complex as the material body. So this is going to be a field of study which is going to extend long into the future. And it's already started actually in science, in mainstream science, and that is the field of quantum biology. Quantum biology exists in mainstream science already, and that is just the study of quantum effects in our biology, basically. Quantum and magnetic effects in the body. And it's a field of science in its infancy currently. But it's most likely that when all the evidence comes through for all these types of energy anatomy, that's where it will start off, in quantum biology probably. And, you know, they'll probably find all sorts of other names for things, and because they like doing that, scientists like doing that, they find their own names. They don't want, they won't use the word chakra, for example, because that's been used for thousands of years and or hundreds of years. So, you know, other names will come in for this type of stuff, but it doesn't really matter, does it, what we call things? So let me just show you a few of the systems before I then go back and delve into the lower mind. So let's start with the higher mind. So if I take off the energy body and if I take off the lower mind, add on the higher mind, there we go. So now some people, by the way, in talking about this, some people might call this the science of the soul. So the science of the soul does exist already, that phrase, and really it is the study of the anatomy of the soul. So really this is, it's a bit like that, the anatomy of the soul, because the higher mind is the soul. The higher mind plus the energy body is the soul. But this is just the higher mind on its own here, and I'm not going to go through this in massive detail, of course, because we've got a whole lesson on the higher mind. But there's a whole lot of interesting stuff going on in there. That's the awareness filter there. Look, that little egg-shaped thing at the location of the pineal gland in the brain. But anyway, so that's the higher mind. Now, there's a lot more going on in the higher mind. We've just highlighted some various things to start with, basically. So this is a start on the higher mind. Now let's go to the energy body. The energy body, and there's lots of different systems that we're going to talk about in the energy body. So let me turn a few things off so we can make it less complicated. That is the Kundalini system. So you've got the energy body's skin showing the framework of the energy body, and that's the Kundalini system, right up to the ninth chakra. Okay, let's take that off and put the chakra system on. That's the chakra system. Now we are going to be mentioning the chakra system in this lesson on the lower mind. Meridian system of vessels, transporting a subtle energy around the body and delivering it to the cells of the material body for use in the Krebs cycle. So we're going to mention that today as well. And a free flow system, a system of large vessels around the body. Bidirectional system of vessels around the body. And the chakra cords are also part of the free flow system. Transferring energy to others. Okay, so that is the energy body. So let's turn that off now and go back to the lower mind, because that's the purpose of this lesson. So let's start. So the lower mind is a malleable magnetic energy framework which overlays the material body. Now, if you do research online, you will get various aspects of what we are talking about in these lessons. But a lot of it is jumbled up. There's a lot of jumbled up stuff going on online, as ever, of course. Now, this has been named before, and sometimes it's called the etheric template. So lots of different layers of energy anatomy has been named before, plenty of times. and you might get different names for different things. So we call it the lower mind, but sometimes it's called the etheric template. Now, it's an overlay to the material body. It's a magnetic energy overlay to the material body, and it's the closest in frequency to the material body. If you remember the anatomy intro lesson, we talked about layers or different scales of frequency. Well, lower mind is on the lowest frequency of magnetic field in the human body. And it's an overlay to the material body. So it overlays all the systems of the material body. And it's got a few of its own things in there as well. So I'm going to go through some of these organs and systems in here. And then we're going to go and do a bit of revision on the karma emotion engine, because one of the most important things in this system, in the lower mind, is the karma organs, the karma emotion organs. So you've got an overlay. Let's start with the overlay to the nervous system. And on here, we've drawn in the brain. You can see the brain shape there, and also the spinal column, which goes down the spine there. This one here, that's the spinal column. It's see-through because it's made of magnetic energy. So that's not the spinal column, that's not the brain. It's an overlay to the brain. It's a magnetic energy overlay that overlays the brain. So every single neuron in the brain has a lower mind counterpart. That's why when we say lower mind thinking is the same as brain thinking in terms of thought patterns, because every neuron has an overlay to it. So let me turn that off quickly now, the nervous system overlay, so that it doesn't confuse things. Actually, before I do that, let me just turn off the cortex first. If we turn off the cortex, you can actually see inside there. And there you can see the thalamus. We talked about the thalamus last week in the brain. That object there, that is the thalamus in the brain. The overlay, should say, the overlay to the thalamus in the brain. Now that's very important, which I'll come to in a second, because if I toggle that on and off quickly, you will see some organs underneath there. Look, those are the karma producing and processing organs inside the thalamus. And by the way, when we first drew the karma organs, we didn't know what the thalamus actually looked like. We hadn't done the research on the brain at that point. So we drew them in there, and then we found out later on that they fitted perfectly in the thalamus. So let me turn that off, turn off the nervous system overlay. And now we can see a whole load of stuff. So let me first start with the circulation system. This big ring vessel, and I'll turn the labels on now, because we can do labeling in this program as well. There we go. So the big green vessel going all the way down there. Let me turn off some of this other stuff so we can, it's not so convoluted. It's easier. So lower mind circulation system, central ring vessel. That's the circulation system of the lower mind, because each of these energy frameworks has an energy circulation system. And why wouldn't it? The material body has blood circulation system. The energy body has meridian system and free flow system circulation systems. Well, the lower mind has to have one as well. The higher mind also has one. Anyway, that's the central ring vessel there. Now, another interesting thing about the circulation system, if I put the rest of the circulation system on, now, what does that look like? That looks like one of the systems that we talked about last week, doesn't it? That is the same vessels as the lymphatic system. You can see the lymph vessels and you can see the lymph nodes. In fact, to get this effect, I've downloaded the lymphatic system and then made it see-through, basically. So, and the reason is, when you look very closely at the lower mind circulation system, it overlays the lymphatic system. It's part of the lymphatic system in the material body. So over all of that material stuff, the lymph vessels and lymph nodes, there is a lower mind counterpart, an overlay, which is actually circulating subtle energy around the body. And this is how the lower mind circulation system gets subtle energy to every cell of the material body, because the lymphatic system is hooked into every cell of the material body because it's draining that lymph fluid. And inside those lymph nodes, I think I mentioned this last week actually, inside those lymph nodes something very interesting is happening with the connection between the meridians and the lower mind circulation system. So when we talk about the energy body next week, we'll be talking about the meridians and how the meridians deliver subtle energy into the lower mind circulation system, and they meet the circulation system at these lymph nodes, and then from the lymph nodes it then gets transferred into the material body. So let's turn off the circulation system there because that's a bit confusing. So another few things that I want to show you in here before I go off to talk about the karma emotion engine again. These organs here, which are inside the thalamus, or these two are inside each lobe of the thalamus, these two here. And that is the guna, that green one. Guna, which is energy programming, programs energy. And the one on the right is the kara, kara, which is karma production. It makes karma. That's that brown one there. And then underneath is the phala. The phala processes karma emotion. Go phala. So we did the karma lesson, didn't we? So if you remember, hopefully you remember some of this from the karma lesson, and I think you did a homework on it as well, describing the karma emotion engine. So those are the organs there of the karma emotion engine. I'm going to do a bit of a reminder in a minute, don't worry. Another few things I want to show you on this diagram is this is karma storage, but it's current life. Karma storage, current incarnation karma storage. And then the last thing is the connections into the chakras, because the lower mind is connected into the chakras. The chakras are in the energy body, but the lower mind is connected into them. So I've drawn those connections on this diagram: the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat. And I've left it at that for now, because those are the emotion chakras. Hi, Chrissy. Yeah, that's a good question actually, and I haven't looked at that yet. I haven't put that in anywhere. Can you tell us? Can you see it? What region? Sorry, thalamus. It's down here though. It's in the abdomen. Sorry, were you thinking of the? Do you mean up here? This one here? Yeah. So that's the current life karma storage. So that's right down here in the abdomen. Well, I guess I've put it right in the middle of the body, I'd say. Can you see the outline of the skin? So it's on the center line, but it's about just below the heart, I guess. Is it? Oh, okay. Where does what, in the sort of chest area? Do you mean? Or? All right. Okay. I wonder if this is your intuition talking to us, because I know that I can see it somewhere around there. And I haven't really gone into it deeply to see where it fits into the material body, because it will do. So maybe the fact that where I can't see where you're pointing there. Okay, so so slightly higher up on the sort of higher the breastbone. All right, well, so that, and my intuition is now saying that you're right. So I think that's your intuition saying where it is. Yeah, so basically I need to move that up a little bit, and so it's actually a little bit there. Oh, the thymus, is it there? Yeah. No. Yeah, no, mine too now. Mine's screaming at me that you're right. Yeah, okay, that needs some more investigating, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, thank you for that. See, I love that. So that just shows that all you have to do is look, or well, it's not as simple as that. Your higher mind has to allow it, of course. But when your higher mind switches on that tap, you start to see, don't you? Love it. Great. So that's the karma. And by the way, if anyone else has any intuitions like that, that's exactly how this 3D diagram is getting built. So please shout out if you think you have something. So that's the karma storage, current life karma storage. Another little thing I should add here is that little blue dot at the back there. That's the connection to the bindu. Now the bindu is in the energy body, and I'll show you where the bindu is now. I'll switch on the energy body, away the chakra system. Okay, there we go. So the bindu, I've drawn it on this diagram. I've drawn it as part of the Kundalini system, which it is part of the Kundalini system, but it does a lot more than the Kundalini system. So the pink is the Kundalini system, but there, that grey dot there is the bindu. And the bindu is a connection, a gluing point between all of the frameworks. So the reason why I've put it also a connection to the bindu into the lower mind framework, anatomy, is because of karma. Karma emotion from past lives is stored in the outside layers of the energy body. Now, I haven't painted these on yet, but we are going to paint these on because they are arranged in certain layers in the energy body. Now, this is, I was going to say common knowledge, but it is also known. It's also been known before in our cultural history that karma is stored in the outside layers of the energy body in these certain maps. You can actually have a map of the human psyche if you look at the energy body. However, we'll talk about that when we talk about the energy body. But karma is drawn through the bindu. Karma emotion is drawn through the bindu to be processed in the lower mind. So let me take off the energy body, back to the lower mind. That's why there is a connection there. That little blue dot, that's a connection to the bindu because it's going to be drawing karma, past life karmas through the bindu. Right, so now I've chucked a load of anatomy at you. Now I want to go back to the karma emotion engine and do a bit of revision so that then we can talk about the different steps in the karma emotion engine, and then we'll go back to the anatomy and we'll run through that karma emotion engine using the anatomy on the diagram. So let me just switch around a few things here. Okay, there we go. So you've seen this diagram before because it was part of the karma lesson. It's the karma emotion engine. I'm going to run through this diagram to give you a reminder of how it works. So first of all, let's start at the bottom left-hand corner, and that is a trigger. So actually, before I even start that, I should just remind you that what is the karma emotion engine? It is the emotional cycle. This is how our emotions work. When we get locked in an emotional reaction, this is what's going on, basically. Now, let me just remind you about the emotional reaction very quickly. Thinking. You start thinking, then that produces emotional energy, then that activates a chakra in the energy body. Then that produces the emotional response, that fizzing, that negative fizzing that you feel, and then that activates more of the thinking, and then more of the emotion, thinking, emotion. That's the emotional cycle, round and round and round. So the karma emotion engine is just adding another layer in there. It's adding what's going on with karma emotion, or emotional memory. So we start with a trigger, don't we? Start with a trigger, something outside of ourselves. Most likely something in our lives that's triggering us. And that actually kicks off a process of thinking. And that happens in the lower mind, magnetic energy framework. But let's not forget, it happens in the brain as well, of course, because it's the thinking patterns in the neurons in the brain. But because the lower mind has an overlay, the lower mind thinks as well. So the lower mind starts thinking about the trigger. It starts getting wound up, you could say. It starts getting annoyed, perhaps, and starts thinking about the trigger. Next, the kara is activated to start producing karma. So it's the thinking in the mind which activates the production of karma from the kara, the karma production organ. And that kara stores the karma. It sends the karma to the lower mind storage, which I've just shown you, and we had a discussion about where it was. So that's where the lower mind stores its current life karma. Now, if we fast forward quite a long time, after that particular incarnation, it gets stored in the energy body as past life karma, or long-term storage. So after death, there is a transfer process from the karma from the lower mind storage to the energy body storage in the skin of the energy body. And then, of course, that becomes past life karma. Now, when we're burning karma, it comes through the bindu. The past life karmas come through the bindu, which I've just shown you on the diagram. So all that past life karma that's stored in the outside layers of the energy body all get funneled through the bindu and into the lower mind for processing. And what processes it? The phala, the karma processing organ. That processes the karma with a particular programming on it. Now I've put another arrow there. You'll notice that I've put a long arrow from current life karma up to the phala as well. That is to show that the phala actually does draw from both places. It draws from the bindu, i.e. past life karmas, and it also draws from the current life karma. So we're always burning karma from two different sources, past life and current life. And then the phala activates the guna to start producing subtle energy with a programming. This is emotional energy. The guna is the programming organ, and it produces emotional energy. This is what gets stuck in all the chakras and stuck and blockages everywhere around the energy body. We'll talk about that next week, of course. But it's a very important part of the karma emotion engine, emotional energy. It's part of our emotional cycle. So an emotional energy with a particular programming which relates to the karma that was processed, that emotional energy then circulates and then activates a particular chakra. And it's coded for a particular chakra. And here we have to go back to energy psychology and remember that each chakra, each emotion chakra regulates a different characteristic in the personality. Therefore, it will go to the heart chakra, let's say, if it's to do with loving relationships. And then the chakra activates the physiological response in the material body. And that is the emotional reaction. So it's the chakra which activates the limbic system in the brain. We talked about the limbic system last week, didn't we? The emotional centers in the brain. The endocrine system also involved with mood and nervous system, of course. And that emotional reaction then activates more thinking and more triggering. And this is where we go round and round and round in the emotional cycle. So there's the last bit of this diagram is which bits of all this are we aware of? Which parts are we conscious of? And that has to do with the awareness filter in the higher mind, which I showed you at the beginning of this lesson, just very quickly, in the higher mind anatomy, where the awareness happens. Now, which bits are we aware of? There's two arrows there. We are aware of emotional reactions. We can feel the emotional reactions. We are also aware of conscious thoughts. So that's why there's two arrows there. All the rest of the stuff is subconscious. We're not aware of it. It's all just a subconscious process. So let me go back over that once more using an example, because it's all a bit abstract until you start thinking about or using an example, isn't it? So let me start again. And the example we're going to use is anxiety. And the particular type of anxiety we're going to use is fear of exams. Exam anxiety. And that is a fear plus a context, isn't it? Which is karma emotion. So the trigger is the upcoming exam. Poor little kid at school, got loads of really important exams coming up. That's the trigger. It's outside of them, of course, the exam. It's not part of their system. It's the trigger outside. So that activates the lower mind and brain, start thinking about it. Or let's call it worrying now. Constantly worrying about upcoming exams. That activates the kara to start producing karma. So whenever somebody is worrying about something, they're producing more karma. That gets stored in the current life karma. I'm going through it quite quickly, obviously. That gets stored in the current life karma. And then after that incarnation, it will get stored in the outside layers of the energy body. Now, it may be that this karma, the reason why they're getting scared of exams is from a previous life. So they might be actually burning past life karmas and producing more current life karmas on the same topic. because past life karma gets drawn through the bindu to be processed. So it might be the case that they were scared of exams in their previous life. And that past life karma is now getting drawn through the bindu to be processed. Now, something I didn't mention on the last time round is that there's another arrow here from the lower mind to the bindu, because when the lower mind thinking happens, not only do you start producing karma, but you activate the burning of karma as well. So that lower mind thinking process produces karma, but also activates the burning of karma. And it is the phala which is processing that karma. So the karma that it's processing is, or that the karma has a programming, a coding. And the coding relates to fear plus exams. That's the coding, the programming on that karma. And when that phala processes it from past life and from current life, then it's going to produce an emotional energy with the coding for exam anxiety. So the guna produces the emotional energy. That emotional energy then goes to a particular chakra. Which chakra is it going to be? Well, exam anxiety will be part of the solar plexus chakra. Identification with beliefs. All things like fear of failure, things like that, or fear of judgment, all these types of fears, all held within the solar plexus chakra. So that's the chakra that it's going to be heading for or coded for. And then the chakra activates the emotional reaction in the body, and you feel that anxiety. And all this is happening almost pretty much instantaneously, by the way. This is not a long drawn out process. As soon as you start thinking, you start worrying, you start feeling that fear, don't you? It's instantaneous. And that emotional reaction then kicks off more of the thinking, and we go round and round and round, and we're constantly producing more and more karma and constantly burning old karma. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, so next I'm going to go back to the diagram and run through that using the anatomy. But maybe now would be a good time to have a break as we're in between sections. So let's have a little break and see you in a few minutes. Right then, so we are back to the anatomy diagram, and we're going to go through the example, or we're going to go through the process that we just went through in the karma emotion engine cycle. So let's start right at the beginning, and to do that I have to turn on the nervous system overlay, including the cortex. So there we go, that's the lower mind overlay to the brain, because that's where we start with the karma emotion engine. The cerebral cortex overlay, lower mind thinking, and of course the brain is thinking at the same time, but so are the lower mind neurons. So we start with a trigger, don't we? There's a trigger. There's an exam coming up. A child or teenager has an exam coming up, and their mind starts thinking about that exam, starts worrying about it. And that happens in the cerebral cortex in the brain and cerebral cortex overlay in the lower mind. And then the emotional centers are activated, and that's what the limbic system is, isn't it? So if we just go to take off the cortex and just look again at that, the thalamus is there, which is a relay station, and you've got the amygdala and the hippocampus there. Hippocampus is there, memory, which is emotional memory processing. You've got the amygdala there, which has to do with fear. That's getting processed in the brain, but what's going on inside in the lower mind? Take off the inner brain, take off the whole nervous system overlay. Inside, that trigger is activating some of these organs. And of course, the karma emotion organs are inside the limbic system in the brain. So that trigger, that thinking, activates that one there in the left-hand lobe of the thalamus. That's the kara. It starts producing karma. So when it starts producing karma, it sends it directly to the lower mind karma storage. So that's why there is a vessel there coming outside the back of the kara, that brown vessel, going all the way down to the lower mind karma storage. and it gets stored. That's lower mind, current life karma storage. Now, at the same time, the thinking is also activating the phala, which is this one here, this red one here, just underneath the thalamus in the brain. And that is processing karma, the phala. So that's actually processing karma, and it's activated by the thinking patterns in the brain. Now, where is the karma coming from that is processing? Well, two places. One is current life karma, which is why it's also got a brown tube coming down here to the karma storage in the lower mind. But also, it's also got another tube, a green one, a little green one, going to the blue dot, which is the connection to the bindu. So you can see that little green tube there coming from the back of the phala to the bindu connection. So that is drawing past life karmas from the energy body skin, which I showed you earlier. So that's all the way out here in the energy body, and there's maps of this karma emotion on the energy body, or regions, I should say, where karma is stored, depending on what chakra it relates to. But that karma is drawn in through the bindu connection there, and it's processed in the phala, that red one there. So that phala, activated by the thinking process, but drawing karma from two places, current life karma and past life karma. Now that phala then activates the guna. And the guna is that green one there on the right hand side of the thalamus, inside the thalamus. And that is an energy programming organ. It programs all sorts of different types of energy. And in this case, it programs emotional energy. And it programs emotional energy related to the karma that was processed. So the karma has a particular coding on it relating to exams and fear, and then the guna creates a corresponding emotional energy which then gets fed into this big vessel here. That is the lower mind circulation system. Ring vessel, central ring vessel, which I showed you before. So that emotional energy goes into the lower mind circulation system, and it goes around that system until it reaches one of those connection points to the chakras. These are the connections to the chakras, those little things there. But in this case, we're talking about anxiety, exam anxiety. So it's the solar plexus chakra. So when that emotional energy gets to this point here, it activates this little thing in here. And what's this little thing in here? That's the emotion regulator part of the energy body. Now, I've labeled that there. Connections into chakras, emotional regulation. Now, that is the emotion regulator that's actually in the chakra. Now, I've drawn it on the lower mind diagram, but it's actually in the energy body, that little thing. But I put it on this diagram because it's so important. It's part of the emotional cycle and the karma emotion engine. So I've put that in there. But that's what gets activated inside the chakra. And that's the chakra then, or that little thing there, activates the emotional response in the material body. Now, how does it do that? Well, if I put the nervous system overlay on again, you will see that the spinal column runs over that emotion regulator. That is the spinal column there, or I should say the overlay to the spinal column because it's in the lower mind. So that emotion regulator actually activates more. It activates the emotional response in the body because it's hooked in to the limbic system up here. And the limbic system then produces that fear. And that's what we feel as that negative sensation in the body. We feel that consciously because those senses are actually getting fed into the awareness filter in the higher mind. And on top of that, that emotion regulator activates more thinking. So up the spinal column we go and turn on the cortex there, and more of the thinking happens. And we go round again in a cycle, producing more karma and activating more burning of karma. Okay, so that's the karma emotion engine using those organs. Any questions about that? Okay, so another few little things that I want to mention on this diagram is something to do with emotional energy, and the energy body is included here. But emotional energy, now it's designed to be part of the emotional cycle, of course, so it's part of activating our own emotions. However, we have also evolved a way of communicating our emotions to others. We've talked about this lots, haven't we? The empathic system in the human being, the fact that we're all connected with chakra cords through the collective mind, and that we can transfer this emotional energy between us. It happens naturally, it happens automatically. It happens in animals as well, of course, evolved millions of years ago. So I just wanted to show you the route by which it passes, because again, the guna is involved. The guna here, which is an energy programming organ, that emotional energy passes in the same route into the lower mind circulation system, into that big central ring vessel. And then it goes into, in the same route, it activates one of the chakras, heart chakra. But now I'm going to turn on the energy body to show you that it then overflows into the free flow system. If I turn the free energy body on, there. So that's where the chakra cord actually runs, through that chakra. So that emotional energy comes out of that emotion regulator into the free flow system, or to be honest, it's already in the chakra and chakra cord. So then that comes out through either direction of the chakra cord, and that chakra cord is linked to somebody else's heart chakra, and that's how the emotional energy gets transferred. And then, of course, it actually comes through, let's imagine this is somebody else now, it comes through the heart chakra cord into the next person, goes straight through the chakra cord and into the heart chakra, and activates the emotion regulator in that person. So then you're activating that person's emotional response, and it activates the karma emotion engine in that person. Kind of a collective, you could say that it's a sharing of emotions. You could also say it's a sharing of karma in a way. It's not direct sharing of karma, but it's karma that's activating other individuals. And this is a survival tactic. If you think about it in earlier animals, it's how another way that fear can be transferred, and fear is a survival tool. Okay, I think we're almost there. Yeah, I think we're pretty much there. So has anybody got any questions or comments to make? Yeah, right. So so this is a great conversation, and I don't think we've had it in bits and pieces, certainly in the reincarnation lesson as well, but in an anatomy it's also very important, and I haven't really put it in anywhere, so maybe we should include this. But basically, when the material body gives out, let's say, what happens is that the soul leaves the material body as a unit, including the lower mind. So we tend to think of what we say is that the high mind and the energy body is the soul, the lower mind and the material body is the incarnation. That's the easiest way of understanding it. However, it's more complex than that, because when a body dies, a material body dies, then actually the soul is the higher mind, the energy body, and the lower mind. So the lower mind actually goes with the soul to start with, and that exists for a while. So basically, when you die and you leave your body, you pretty much feel the same, apart from you haven't got a material body. Everything feels the same completely. All the thinking mind is exactly the same. Your consciousness is exactly the same. And I'm saying this because I do remember. So I'm remembering this. And so then at this point, you go through a bit of a journey. You go through a process. And the process is mostly to do with karma being transferred from the storage area, low mind storage area, to the energy body storage. Now, it's a bit of an emotional time, that is. It's a bit of an emotional process. What we feel consciously, we start feeling those emotions as that karma is being transferred from one place to another. That's why it's very well known already that there is a an emotional review after a lifetime. This has been known for a long, long period of time, culturally, let's say. And some people call it a life review. You have to go over your life and come to terms with certain things and come to terms with certain decisions you've made or karma that you've produced or emotions that you've had. And that's actually, in our physiology, that's the transfer of karma from one place to another. So that happens. Another thing that happens is that the personality of the lower mind is uploaded to the higher mind. So, and what that means is all those thought patterns, the conditioning in the lower mind, that's what makes up that current incarnation personality. That gets uploaded into information, into the higher mind. And then we can call it a lower mind sim. Now that's short for simulation. A lower mind simulation in the higher mind memory. So once that's happened, the lower mind then starts to fade away and it gets dropped. So the soul then drops the lower mind because it's just an energy framework that's not needed anymore. And the soul carries on as just the energy body in the higher mind. And that then it's ready then to go into a new incarnation or start planning a new incarnation. And any time in the astral dimensions, that higher mind can at any time use a past incarnation to communicate with. And it's just flipping its lower mind sims. So it's got all these different lower mind sims from previous incarnations. It can flip any of them and use them in the astral dimensions. So it's perfectly possible for somebody to die, to then go into the astral dimensions, and then in between incarnations, they can flip between 3, 4, 5, or as many past lives as they want to. It depends on who they're communicating with in the astral dimensions. Yeah, sorry, what are you saying? That do you feel the actual emotions? Yeah, I think it's a bit like going to therapy. It's a bit like that. So it's not like it's trauma. It's not traumatic, as in it's horrendous. Unless, I mean, in some cases maybe if it's been a very traumatic life. But generally speaking, it's more like a therapy session where you're sitting and things are coming through your mind and you're thinking about old memories and you're kind of reliving experiences and that sort of stuff. So it's a bit more like that. And quite often you've got other people around you that you're talking about it with as well, because quite often you meet old family members and other friends and stuff. So it's not, you're not always on your own either. If you are a higher mind which is in an awake higher mind, because if it's a sleeping higher mind, that's completely different. Then that happens naturally and automatically in dreams. So if a higher mind is not awake, aware of its own reincarnation, and it's not controlling that time in between incarnations, then the consciousness is just going to be dreaming. But the same process happens, but it's through dreams that it actually happens. Yeah. So yeah, poltergeists and things like that, or possessions and these kind of effects are. I think there's probably a range of different stuff that's happening. But yeah, one option is definitely that a lower mind can be creating all this havoc, basically, and quite often they're not aware that they are dead and doing it, because anybody causing that sort of trouble is actually a sleeping higher mind anyway. So they're going to be in a bit of a dream world while they're doing it. But people that have a lot of anger, fear, hatred that are burning, the lower mind has maybe led a life which is quite that sort of life, and then the person dies, and that carries on. Their attitude and their appetite for harming others carries on in the astral dimensions, even if they're in a dream world, and they can latch on to people. And even while they're in a dream, they can be doing stuff to that person. And, they can even use telekinesis and moving stuff around. That's how that happens. And we can talk about that in the next lesson, actually, because there's a reason why a soul can actually use telekinesis in between incarnations, and why it's so very difficult to do while you're in an incarnation. And the reason has to do with a particular type of energy that can come out of the energy body, whereas in an incarnation it's closed off. The lower mind circulation system grows over the chakra openings in an incarnation, and that gets removed in between incarnations, and telekinetic energy can actually come out. But that's another story. But yes, I think going back to your comment, it's the lower minds that are doing that kind of thing. But there are other options there. There are magnetic viruses and other entities that can cause trouble as well. So it's not just humans. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Absolutely. You picked up on that. And there's a lot that's different. It's completely different once you go through Kundalini Awakening and self-realization. When you go through Kundalini Awakening, you still can finish that incarnation and come back in another incarnation to finish it off. I know a couple of people have done that. My mother did that. But once you go past a certain point, then there's a transformation that happens. So if you finish the Kundalini phase, and then there is a section of time where a transformation happens, and then everything changes, because the lower mind is actually getting integrated into the higher mind. So this is part of the phases of self-realization. The higher mind and lower mind are hybridizing together. So in the end, there is no lower mind left, and you could say there's no more higher mind left, because through the process of self-realization, some parts of the lower mind get discarded, some parts of the higher mind get discarded. The lower mind frequency of energy gets upgraded to the higher mind, and you end up with something completely different, basically. So of course it is possible to die and leave a material body, but the energy anatomy is completely transformed at that point. So it's completely different. And in fact, one of the phases of self-realization that we call integration is actually similar to the death process before. You know, the process I just talked about, where the lower mind sim is made, a copy of the lower mind personality is made. That actually happens in the phases of self-realization. So that's one of the phases. So your lower mind is copied and assimilated into the higher mind while you're still alive. That's how it gets rid of the lower mind framework, basically, which is why personalities endure. Yeah. All right. So to answer that, we have to go really deeply into certain topics, but that's okay. No, that's okay. Let's go down the rabbit hole for a minute. All right. So here I have to go backwards and start talking about the different types of self-realization, because when self-realization first happened on this planet about 5,000 years ago, it was of a certain nature. And then more people became self-realized. And now we're at the point of a global awakening. So a lot of people are becoming self-realized right now. Now, the thing is about self-realization, just like everything else in the universe, it evolves. It changes. The process of self-realization changes through the ages. So the first type of self-realization that happened on the planet was of a certain nature. It's the front runners of humanity, you could say. And then there's a different type of self-realization that happens around the global awakening. And I think it will still evolve again into another type of self-realization further down the line, hundreds or thousands of years in the future. There'll be a different type. And the reason why is that different types of beings are needed at different stages of the planet's evolution. Now, having said that, let's go back to the first type of self-realization. And the first type of self-realization is that when that person finishes their last incarnation, they become self-realized, then they drop the material body, and then they exist in the astral dimensions. And they carry on their work in the astral dimensions. Now, this is the very well-known version of self-realization, and this version of self-realization exists in Buddhism, Hinduism, and lots of different spiritual philosophies and yoga philosophy. So that's what, when we talk about avatars, Iyengar Krishnamurti. These are avatars, human avatars. They have finished their human incarnations, and they're still human, but they exist now. Their soul exists in the astral dimensions, and they're still going around doing all their work. All these types of avatars, and originally, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Gaudapada, Patanjali, all these people sparked the early stories of angels, of course. So these are angels are avatars, basically. People have finished ascended masters is another word for it, isn't it? Now, things are starting to change. Self-realization is starting to evolve, and people are going through a different process now. People are going through an accelerated process. And what's actually happening is that a different type of avatar is being produced, which we're calling Deavatara. And it's the type of self-realized person that exists at the time of a global awakening. And the anatomy is very different as well. And this type of avatar has a maya organ. And we're going to talk about a maya organ later on. It's a type of organ. It's a type of energy programming organ. See, I told you we have to do a deep dive on this. But there's also other stuff as well. The material body starts becoming part of the soul. So a Deavatar is a self-realized being that has gone through a transformation process, and the material body is part of the soul. Now, Ursa, Ursa, that is one of the envoys in our astral. I've talked to, some of you know Ursa. Anyway, he is an envoy from somewhere else, from another planet in the astral dimensions. He has the capability of materializing a material body if he wanted. So this is what a Deavatar does. It can actually materialize a material body and vanish it as well. Anyway, so the conclusion of this story is that self-realization is changing, and the future of this planet and self-realization is about to severely change, I would say. And the whole notions of humanity, existence, the source of the universe, is all about to change over the next century or so, or whatever. There's huge changes coming, I think. Yeah. It actually comes from an ancient method called Shaktipat, and this is something in the ancient yoga or yogic traditions, and it was almost a myth for a long period of time as well. It's the ability of a master to disciple activation, where if a disciple was ready, then the master yogi would give them an energy transfer, and Shaktipat means transmission of energy, and it would activate their Kundalini system, basically. And so that has been taken and then blown out of all proportion now. But the problem is that it's possible to do. It's a type of energy healing. So you're activating somebody's Kundalini system. You have to get them to do all sorts of things like visualizations, mantras, contortions, certain really powerful breathwork techniques, and along with the intention to awaken their Kundalini, and they're basically holding their hands out. They're doing a form of energy healing on the person, and that is actually having an effect on their Kundalini system, and it can awaken it. But the problem is it damages it, and if that person's not ready for that awakening, then it gets awakened too early. So people are in all sorts of problems with this, right? Yeah, well, that's really interesting you said that, because I don't know where that comes from exactly, but it also, we've found that it takes 21 incarnations to get rid of heavy karma. From a heavy karma production all the way through until it grades out less and less and less and less and less until it completely disappears, about 21 lifetimes. But there are the other way. That's the way it comes out naturally. There's lots of ways of reducing that through karma yoga and through meditation and stuff like that. So, but that's that heavy karma that first burns, and then the next time around you're thinking again because you're producing more. But when you produce more, we talked about that earlier, didn't we? When you're producing more, you produce a lesser weight of karma. So the first initial thinking process is heavy karma, and then it gets less. less and less, and it goes through medium karma, and then by the time you get to light karma, you're hardly really feeling it anymore. So I guess the heavy karma is a much shorter period of time, but then it grades down into really really light. Well, it's still negative though. So we're still not talking about positive karmas. We're still talking negative karma. But let's say like a huge anger of something causes heavy karma. Then the really light stuff might just be a mild frustration or something. I think we should do it on a Friday, but then it'll ruin your weekend. There is no assignment for this lesson. All right then, lovely. Um, right, we'll have a good week, and we'll see you next Monday for some more energy anatomy.